You should never have been born. Lauren's words froze the cheerful Thanksgiving atmosphere, like a bucket of ice water poured over the carved turkey. The trigger was simple. Our uncle had just showered praise on the house renovation Lauren had done. Lauren's design is amazing. Removing that living room wall made it feel so open. Lauren puffed out her chest with pride. Right? With my sense of style, even an old house can look brand new. I hesitated for a moment. I didn't want to ruin the happy mood, but as a licensed architect, my conscience wouldn't let me stay silent. And so began the usual scene, my accurate advice being treated as sabotage. Uncle, that wall used to be a load-bearing wall. Under the building code, removing it without a professional structural calculation is actually a very dangerous thing to do. The air around the table froze instantly. Lauren let out a dramatic sigh. Come on, Megan. Could you not turn this into one of your architectural firm meetings? Everyone's here to celebrate. Her words made the other relatives chuckle, and our aunt chimed in. Oh, really, I'm terrible with those complicated talks, siding with Lauren. I continued anyway. This isn't just some complicated talk. If a big earthquake hit, this house could— That's enough. I told you, don't bring up such bad luck talk. Lauren's voice sharpened. Then she turned to our father as if asking for help. He spoke up, as if he had been waiting for that cue. Megan, Lauren's right. You're just too rigid. My 50 years of experience and instinct tell me this house is perfectly fine. Experience and instinct. A twisted world where those things outweigh law and scientific reasoning. Everyone fell silent. When I looked at my mother with pleading eyes, what I saw was unbelievable. She didn't scold my father for his smirk beside her. She simply sat there, wearing an icy, indifferent smile. That expression seemed to confirm that she, too, shared his resentment toward my logic. They were already beyond saving. I slowly lifted my head. There was no trembling, no tears, only a calm, still expression as I looked at the three faces of my family. Then, faintly, I smiled. No one at that table knew that my father's construction company would have gone bankrupt long ago without my unpaid architectural work and the monthly financial support I had been sending. That's right. Compared to Lauren's wonderful sense of design and Dad's 50 years of experience, who needs laws or structural calculations? My voice was surprisingly calm. Perfect. Then I suppose you don't need my support anymore. It took them a few seconds to understand what that meant. My father's smile froze. My mother's face turned pale. Lauren's expression shifted from anger to shock. I stood up quietly. At that moment, I was stepping off the sinking, defective ship in its final moments, escaping on the last lifeboat. Even after I left the house, the Thanksgiving party probably continued as if nothing had happened. At the table without me, they were surely laughing, calling me ungrateful and unable to read the room. She'll come crawling back tomorrow, they must have said. They still didn't understand. They had just cut the very last lifeline beneath their own feet. A few blocks away from my parents' house, I hailed a taxi and checked into a nearby hotel without a reservation. I couldn't go back to that apartment. I had no idea what my enraged father might do. Once inside the quiet business hotel room, I opened my laptop immediately. First, I logged into my online banking account and canceled the automatic monthly transfers to my father's construction company. From next month, there would be no more deficit coverage. Next, I logged into the company's shared server. All the architectural plans, structural calculations, and official application documents I had created for free moved to the trash and permanently deleted. I revoked my access privileges as well. Finally, I sent an email to all the major suppliers, subcontractors, and the bank's loan officer. I, Megan, a licensed architect, am officially resigning from all responsibilities related to my father's construction company as of today. I will no longer be accountable for any inquiries regarding the building code or design work. It took less than an hour to finish everything. Then, I made a phone call to the real estate agent managing one of my properties. Yes, it's me. This is sudden, but I'll be moving in tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow. I'll bring my belongings later. After hanging up the phone, I looked out the hotel window at the city glowing with Thanksgiving lights. They were probably still sitting around the turkey, laughing together. In just a few hours, those smiles would turn into despair. I'm just an ordinary licensed architect working at a large design firm in the city. I have a decent reputation and a stable income. But there was a reason I got so deeply involved in my father's construction company. The countless irrational memories tied to that place had slowly corroded my heart. Lauren saw herself as the chief designer, repeatedly making reckless proposals that ignored structure and budget. Even when the expensive imported materials she chose caused major repair troubles within a year, somehow the blame always fell on me. "It's your fault for not checking properly," they said. Whenever I proposed small but important improvements, like changing insulation materials in line with revisions to the building code, my father would only shout, "Who'd waste money on parts the client can't even see?" What they wanted to protect wasn't the future of the company, it was their fragile pride and their outdated way of doing things. My accurate advice never reached their ears. No matter how precisely I drew the plans, they would ignore them on site, choosing instead to trust their gut. I had seen it happen too many times. No matter what I achieved in this family's story, I was destined to remain nothing more than a nameless prop behind the stage. I had planned to keep my distance from my father's company, but 2 years ago, its business started to collapse rapidly. My father's old-fashioned methods could no longer keep up with modern demands. The deficit grew, and the bank was about to cut off their loans, until my mother called me in tears. I couldn't bring myself to abandon them. Thanks to my financial support, the company barely survived. The business improvement plan I wrote overnight convinced the bank to continue the loans. Yet I knew what my father said to his clients every time he bowed his head. "It's all thanks to my daughter Lauren. Her efforts on social media helped us reach a new customer base." There was never a word of gratitude for me. My painstaking work and professional expertise were easily replaced by a few glossy Instagram photos and a handful of likes. So why did I keep sending them large sums of money every month, like pouring it all down a drain? Pity? Family love? Of course not. It wasn't some self-sacrifice born from helplessness. If anything, it was the complete opposite. A warped sense of superiority. That was the only reason I kept being involved with them. Without me, my stubborn, prideful father and my vain, self-absorbed sister would have been ruined long ago. For the past 2 years, my father's outdated construction methods and Lauren's reckless designs had existed only as a fragile castle built upon my earnings and my professional credibility as an architect. By turning on the faucet of money and standing as their legal shield, I had allowed them to maintain a thin veneer of respectability in society. They never realized it, but I was the one keeping them alive. Throughout a life of being looked down upon, that was the one thing that gave me absolute power over this family. The monthly support I sent was both their lifeline and the invisible collar I had fastened around their necks. But that night, when Lauren spat out the words, "You should never have been born," and our parents smiled in silent agreement, it destroyed everything. In that moment, something inside me burned out completely. There was no need to let them live anymore. They were the ones who wished for it. So be it. I would show them the moment when the lifeline I had given turned into a rope tightening around their necks. I would simply watch from the best seat in the house as their pride led them to their own downfall. Late the next morning, I stepped out of a taxi in front of a house. Unlike the previous day, I wore plain clothes and carried an ordinary tote bag instead of my work briefcase. I had meant it as a light disguise, but it turned out to be unnecessary. This was the house I had bought a few months earlier as a private investment. The reason was simple. It stood directly across the street from my parents' home and my father's construction company. When I got out of the taxi, chaos was already unfolding on the other side of the street. My mother was crying, pleading with the delivery driver from a materials supplier. My father was clutching what looked like bank documents, shouting furiously into his phone. They were completely consumed by their own panic, too distracted to notice anything happening across the street. Perfect. I quietly unlocked the door and stepped inside, walking up to the window on the second floor. This was my new command center, my front row seat. And Lauren? I saw her through the large window of their house. She was pacing back and forth in an empty reception room, pressing her phone to her ear, her face twisted in anger. Her gestures were hysterical. She was probably ranting to a friend, bad-mouthing me as usual. Her eyes never turned toward the street outside. The real estate agent had told me that the previous night, they had pounded on the door of my old apartment until morning. The neighbors had called the police, and officers had shown up to calm things down. They still didn't know where I had gone. And then they didn't even realize that I was watching them from just across the street. For the next few days, I kept observing the sinking ship through the gap in my curtains. The small renovation project they had been working on came to a complete halt, and I saw what looked like a client confronting my father in front of the office. Deliveries stopped arriving, and one by one, the workers stopped showing up. Then, one afternoon, my smartphone buzzed quietly. It was a message from my college friend, Brooke. She had always been one of the few people who truly understood how my family treated me. The message contained only a single line. "Hey, did you see this? It makes me so angry." Attached below was a screenshot of Lauren's Instagram post. It showed an old family photo taken years ago. Everyone was smiling, an image perfectly staged to look like happiness. Beneath it was a long caption. "Our beloved family has been torn apart by one person's selfish actions. My sister Megan, perhaps overwhelmed by years of jealousy and work stress, suddenly left us. She's emotionally unstable and refuses our help. Please, everyone, pray that she finds her way back soon." The comment section was overflowing with sympathetic messages from relatives and friends who had no idea what was really happening. "Lauren, that's terrible. What happened to Megan? I'm so worried." "You've done nothing wrong. Stay strong." A masterful performance of victimhood. They had erased their own wrongdoing and recast me as the jealous, unstable younger sister. It was a calculated move to win sympathy and isolate me completely. Predictable, shallow. I saved the screenshot and replied to Brooke. "Thanks for letting me know. Don't worry, this is all part of the plan." There was no need to argue. The more she spread her lies online, the greater the shock would be when the truth finally came out. She was dousing her own stage with gasoline, all by herself. I set my smartphone down on the desk and looked out the window again. "Go on, Lauren. Keep spreading it. Until the moment I strike the match." Lauren's tragic hero act on social media escalated by the day. This time, she posted a photo of our exhausted father carrying lumber alone with the caption, "Because of my heartless sister, my father's construction company is on the brink of collapse. But I won't give up. I'll protect this place no matter what." The flood of sympathetic comments only fed her vanity and self-delusion. Perfect. The stage was set. The audience was gathered. There couldn't be a better moment. I picked up my phone and called a man. He was Tyler, in his early 40s, a cold, calculating CEO of a major real estate development firm. He was also my soon-to-be business partner in launching a new architectural firm. "Tyler, I've got an interesting land development proposal for you," I said when he answered my call. "Oh? Coming from you, that means it's something deliciously twisted," he replied, his tone amused. I sent him the documents for a small subdivision project that had stalled, one that was managed by my father's construction company, though I left that detail out. A few minutes later, his reply came. "What the hell is this? The design's archaic. I'm surprised the city even approved it." Exactly. That's what makes it an intriguing case study, don't you think? I followed up by sending him a perfectly prepared redevelopment plan I had written in advance. The plan's condition was simple yet ruthless. The existing construction company would be fully acquired, and its management, my father included, would be rehired as low-level on-site workers. "I see. I can see where you're going with this," Tyler said after a pause, his voice carrying a note of amusement. "So what do you want me to do? Smash the reality into this company's president's face?" "Exactly. Give them the best show imaginable." I could hear his quiet laughter on the other end of the line. "Leave it to me. This is getting interesting." A few days later, from my window, I quietly watched as a black luxury car glided to a stop in front of the construction company. The sight of Tyler stepping out made my father, who had been clearing away scrapwood, freeze in shock. Dressed in a fine suit, Tyler looked completely out of place amid the shabby surroundings. My father hurriedly stopped what he was doing and greeted him as politely as he could. Tyler gave the dusty office a quick glance and said something short. Through the binoculars, I could see my father's face light up in surprise and delight. He had probably said something like, "I'm considering investing in this land development as a joint partner." That one line was enough to send my mother and Lauren rushing out of the office. Lauren looked Tyler up and down, evaluating him from head to toe, then flashed a dazzling, almost theatrical smile. They ushered him inside and served instant coffee as though entertaining royalty. Perfect. Phase 1 of the plan was a success. I set down my binoculars and turned back to my desk. The details of what came next would be clear soon enough. Tyler would send me an audio file later. A few hours later, I watched as he left the building, got into his car, and drove off. Not long after, an audio file from him arrived on my laptop. I put in my wireless earphones and hit play. Well, I must say, I'm surprised. Why would someone like you be interested in a small construction company like ours? It was my father's sycophantic tone. I saw you on social media, came Tyler's cool, measured voice. I was inspired by your daughter's dedication to preserving the family business despite the hardship. Then came Lauren's shrill excitement, followed by my parents' foolish agreement. They began boasting about their supposed craftsmanship, dressing up their obsolete methods in self-congratulatory nostalgia. I listened in silence, my face expressionless. How utterly pathetic. They truly believed that their talent and hard work had finally caught the eye of a major figure. I paused the recording and took a sip of coffee. Let them dream, until that dream turns into a nightmare. A week after Tyler's visit, my family was euphoric. Despite being on the verge of bankruptcy, they were intoxicated by the fantasy of a joint project with a major developer. Lauren flooded social media with posts like, "My father's craftsmanship and my design sense have finally been recognized by the industry's top players." And then the day of reckoning arrived. I stood by the upstairs window, holding my smartphone, quietly waiting for the moment to arrive. Wireless earphones rested in my ears. The upcoming negotiation would be recorded in full, just as Tyler and I had arranged in advance. Through the glass, I could see my father, my mother, and Lauren, who looked like she thought this was her big day, sitting at the office table, their faces tense with a mix of hope and anxiety. Moments later, Tyler appeared and placed a thick stack of contracts on the table. He took a seat, pulled out his smartphone, and set it down in front of him. My father frowned suspiciously. "Excuse me." Tyler's calm voice came clearly through my earphones. "I need to share this in real time with my business partner. Of course, this conversation will also be recorded for documentation purposes." "I see, I understand," my father replied, nodding as if impressed. I sat in the perfect seat, the best in the house, with flawless sound for the show that was about to begin. "Here is the contract. Before we proceed with signatures, let me explain the key terms," Tyler said. "In order to execute this project, our company will first absorb your construction firm as a wholly owned subsidiary. Accordingly, all existing executives will be required to resign from their positions." There was a brief silence, followed by my father's bewildered voice. What?" "Furthermore," Tyler continued, "under the new president's leadership, you will all be rehired as on-site workers, handling materials, cleaning, whatever tasks you'll be assigned to do." "Wait, what are you talking about?" Lauren's shrill voice pierced through the earphones. "Allow me to introduce," Tyler said smoothly, "the project director and the new president of your company." He paused deliberately. Perfectly timed. By then, I had already left my house and was standing across the street, right in front of the office door. As a heavy, uneasy silence filled the room, the rusty hinges creaked as I opened the door. Every gaze turned toward me. I walked forward slowly but firmly, stopping at the table. And then, taking over Tyler's sentence, I said, "It's me." After those two words left my lips, the dusty office was swallowed by a silence heavier than any shout could ever be. My father's face drained of color like concrete, his mouth hanging slightly open. My mother covered her mouth with trembling hands, terror written in her eyes. The first to break the silence was, of course, Lauren. Her frozen expression snapped into one of hatred as she stood up. "What the hell are you doing here?" she demanded. Her high, sharp voice rang through the office, and she turned to Tyler. "Tyler, you've been tricked. This woman is a curse on our family. She's trying to destroy everything," Lauren pleaded desperately. At that moment, I said her name. "Lauren." My voice carried no emotion. That lack of feeling stopped her hysteria in its tracks. "Sit down." It was an order. Lauren hesitated for a beat, then tried to open her mouth to protest. But Tyler cut her off coldly before she could. "Please read the contract carefully. If you sign this agreement, the assets, liabilities, and all rights of this construction company will legally fall under the management of Miss Megan, the new president, as of today. Even the chair you are sitting in will become property of her company from that moment on." My father let out something like a groan. My mother began to cry quietly. "This is a trap," my father muttered. "Did you deceive us?" he accused. I did not deceive you. For the first time, I looked my father in the eye and answered him. I am only helping dismantle the defective buildings you yourselves constructed. Then I turned my gaze back to Lauren. You have two choices. Sign that contract and work as my employee starting tomorrow, or give up everything now and leave this office. Choose. Lauren screamed hysterically. Don't be ridiculous. Who would ever sign that? Get out, both of you. My father continued in a shaking voice. Get out. This construction company belongs to me. I will not hand it over to the likes of you. They summoned the last of their pride and refused to sign the contract. It was almost pitiful how perfectly predictable their reaction was. Without a word, I gave Tyler a brief glance. He responded with a quiet sigh, then reached into his attaché case and slid another set of papers across the table. They were official notices from the bank, a bundle of demand letters. These are the operating loan taken under your personal guarantee, the unpaid invoices from your material suppliers, and the back taxes. If you refuse, we'll withdraw, but the only path left for you will be bankruptcy. Tyler's voice was calm, detached, merely stating facts. My father tried to bluff his way through. Bankruptcy, huh? Fine, I'll start over after clearing the debt. Tyler smiled faintly, as though he had been waiting for that line. Yes, you may be released from your debts under bankruptcy law, but in exchange, this house, the land, and the tools you've treasured your whole life will all be seized and auctioned off. You'll be left with nothing. No money, no business, and no credit. Tell me at your age, how exactly do you plan to start over? He paused, then delivered the devil's final offer. However, if you sign this contract, our company will assume all of your debts. You may even continue living in this house. As employees, of course. It wasn't an offer of salvation. It was a choice between humiliation and oblivion. Either live with a collar around your neck or lose everything, including your pride. My father's shoulders slumped. His hand trembled while holding the pen. My mother sobbed uncontrollably. Lauren bit her lip and glared at me with burning hatred, but she knew. There was nowhere left to run. In the end, they signed the contract. With shaking hands, they wrote their names on their own life sentences. Months passed. My father's construction company was reborn. With my strategic management and Tyler's financial backing, the business quickly turned profitable, now handling several major development projects. And as minimum wage employees, my family continued to exist within it. My father became a laborer on site. The once proud master builder who boasted of his 50 years of experience and intuition now sweated under the summer sun, hauling materials according to the instructions of younger workers, just as outlined in the blueprints I had drawn. My mother worked as a cleaner and assistant at the site office. While I chaired executive meetings, she would quietly sweep outside the conference room, careful not to make a sound. And Lauren, the former chief designer, now wore a dirt-stained uniform and scrubbed portable toilets at the construction site. When she discovered that her hourly wage matched the part-time workers she once mocked, she broke down and cried in front of everyone. I offered them no more words than necessary. I only drop by the sites occasionally, walking the dusty ground in heels as I inspect their work. That is the eternal punishment I have given them. On Thanksgiving night, they told me, "You should never have been born." Now they must learn every single day how miserable and powerless they are, living only because of someone like me. My revenge is complete. No, perhaps it has only just begun. As long as this company continues, their personal hell will never end.